giving it the sense of security, of something that through all the years of increasing speeds and technical advances still stays the same in many ways. Like the traditional words about to be spoken by Mrs. Mary Hullman, the widow of the man who made the Speedway what it is today.
Gentlemen, start your engine.
Now, the roar from the throats of literally hundreds of thousands of people, because the moment is nearing as the engines start. Looks like everybody has gotten their engines underway. A.J. Foyt looking for his 5th win in the Indianapolis 500. Nobody else has ever won 4. The familiar car, number 14. Number 6, Rick Mears. He won this race in 1979. There's Johnny Rutherford way back in the 10th row. 3-time winner of the race. Lone Star JR is on his helmet. Now the wide scene as they are almost ready to move out. There goes Mario Andretti on the outside of the 2nd row, remember, seeking his 2nd win 15 years after he won in 1969. Everyone apparently safely started. Pit crews scrambling, getting out of the way. The race course belongs to the drivers now, and to the pace car, which will lead them until it's time to go. Well, there it is, one of the great sights in American sport. The cars still on the parade lap before this immense crowd anticipating the start of the Indianapolis 500. I'm in our ABC commentary booth with my colleague Sam Posey, a man who has driven at Indianapolis and Le Mans, for that matter, most of the important racing circuits of the world. Sam, it seems to me that not only is this the fastest Indy field in history, but also there's more quality of drivers and cars going all the way back through the rows.
That's it. I mean, you can talk about the favorites in the front rows, but deep in the pack, there are people that might bear watching. Let me give you an example. Danny Sullivan, a man about whom a great deal has been written lately. He's a jet setter with what is said to be an insatiable fondness for women. He has a secret plan that he hopes will win him this race. There's Kevin Cogan, who is driving the only all-American car in this race. Most of the cars are English. Fittingly, it's a Dan Gurney creation. That could be something very special. And lastly, a guy, you know, I don't like to make predictions, but the man I'm about to mention, I think is going to be 4th. I'm going to go out on that much of a limb. Al Holbert. He was the winner at Le Mans last year, and he has practiced for more laps here than anyone else in this month. He's done 1,600 miles of practice. He is going to be 4th.
Now, let's meet our other commentators, starting with 3-time world champion Jackie Stewart, whose views you'll be hearing a number of times during our telecast. Jackie?
Memorial Weekend is not celebrated in Scotland, so since 1966 this great day has only meant for me the Indy 500. It's more apple pie and ice cream than anything else that I see in America, but this year it's more special than ever before because of what I believe are the excessively high speeds round this track. The drivers, on the other hand, are extremely exciting, a new generation almost to have come to this 500. But if I sit here right now and look out, I only think of one thing. I hope and I pray that it'll be a safe race.
I'm Bill Fleming. One of the more interesting statistics we're going to be following today is how much time does a driver spend off the track. That doesn't mean just in the pits, but how speedy is he getting into the pits and getting out of the pits? The man who was most efficient at that last year was Tom Sneven. As you know, he won the race.
This fuel calibration gauge on all of the tanks here on pit road helped the crews keep abreast of how much of the 285 gallons they've allocated for the race remains. I'm Jack Arute on pit road, and when fuel consumption becomes a question, we'll be here to cover it.
I'm Larry Newber at the entrance to Gasoline Alley. On any other day, this is the view from the cockpit that the drivers would like to have, going back to that historic area. Today, unfortunately, if you exit this way off the racetrack back to the garage area, what that means is that you have lost the race. 32 drivers will leave the speedway through this path. Only one will leave the way everybody wants to leave, and that is out through Victory Lane.
I'm Ray Gandolf, and for the past couple of weeks I've been doing some off-the-track stories related to the race. They're distant relatives, second cousins maybe, but they're good stories. I think you'll like them.
And now there is a look at the field from the front. Coming right at you past the start-finish line, the pace car Pontiac Fiero, well out in front of the field. There's that first row of Tom Sneva, Howdy Holmes, and Rick Mears. You've been in a car at this time, Sam. Try to remember it for us.
Jim, I think what's worse about it is you can't bring the car up to speed. There's no way you can get, you know, it's not like baseball, perhaps where you could go out and throw the ball or swing the bat, or golf where you could hit a few balls. Here you go into this thing cold. These speeds are nowhere nearly high enough to get any feel for how the car will be when the race begins. That makes it very, very hard.
Isn't it remarkable in a sport of 200-mile-an-hour speeds how much patience it takes?
Well, and we may see that become the fulcrum of the race today, Jim, because fuel consumption is an issue here. If you were to run the entire race flat out, it's possible that you might run out of gas. There are rules that can, or fuel, there are rules that limit how much fuel you may use during the race. So yes, patience will be a very big factor.
Tom Sneva right there, car number 1. Next to him, Howdy Holmes, the blue and white 41, his teammate. And in the golden car, Rick Mears, number 6.
And you know, Jim, that front row, Howdy Holmes there, the least experienced of all the drivers in this leading group, and there's some concern. He's a very, very fine driver, but he's never raced at the front at Indianapolis before. And so the more experienced drivers like Andretti and Mears are afraid they might get trapped behind him and let Sneva get loose and establish a big lead.
Look at that, more seats here than ever before. There are now seats for 260,000 people. With the crowd in the infield, waiting for the green now. Looks like they're going to get it.
Just a few seconds
There's
away.
flagman Dwayne Sweeney. He has the green flag in his hand. Cars will come into view in a moment here.
They're closely
and the
grouped.
green flag is out there racing at Indianapolis. Rick Mears in the golden car going for the lead. Mears has the lead. Behind him, Sneva and Michael Andretti from the inside of the second row.
Already, Jim, we have a new record. Mears is now leading his 6th consecutive Indy 500. No man has ever done that. It may be a day of records. I have a feeling about it.
The bombs going off. Once again, remember, that's no accident on the race course or anything. It's just the ceremonial bombs indicating to the surrounding countryside that the Indianapolis 500 is again underway. 200 laps lie ahead of them.
Oh!
Little puff of smoke there.
Yes.
From Sneva.
Absolutely. Well, that's untoward, of course, at this early stage. A quick word about the track. It rained very heavily night before last year. The track was literally scoured clean almost by that, so they'll be trying to feel their way on a track that feels unfamiliar to their car.
Quite remarkable how far ahead of the pack those two cars are already.
Yeah, that's right. Now I'm speculating. Let's try to figure out what might be wrong with Sneva. We didn't see that puff of smoke again, Jim. It might have been something just a little bit overfilled. You know what I mean? An oil tank or something. He seems to be fine, and he is in Mears' draft right now.
Rick Mears, who won in 1979. Tom Sneva, the defending champion. Coming into the pits, Michael Andretti.
Oh, no. By far the most. This is Jeff Brabham.
Correction on that.
It is Jeff Brabham.
The colors of the car are similar. This is number 18, Jeff Brabham, spotting 1 point right on
In fact, Michael Andretti is running 3rd. He's 3rd in your picture right here. And he is in good shape. In fact, how long has it been, Jim, since a rookie ran the race that Michael Andretti is running right this minute? Well ahead of his dad, I might say.
At age 21.
Okay, and Jim, we have a new absolute lap record here. The leader is going, Mears is going over 200 miles an hour at this point. The previous high was Sneva at this time last year, 197. So Rick Mears, you see him there in the yellow car, over 200 miles an hour. And mind you, the car is full of fuel right now.
Jeff Brabham in the pits, right there, car number 18, son of the famous Formula One racing driver. So we have had the first competitive 200-mile-an-hour lap in Indianapolis history.
Incredible, and this is a very good race. Now, whatever was wrong with Sneva at the outset does not seem to be wrong now. Remember some personal rivalries here. Rick Mears is the man that took over the slot on the Roger Penske team. The man following him right now, Tom Sneva, was fired from. So there are personal rivalries as well as those among the car owners.
Mears still out in front.
Both these men...
Sneva. Michael Andretti and his father right behind him.
I know. Isn't that magnificent? Can you imagine, Jim, the experience of seeing your son ahead of you in the early part of the Indy 500?
The third and fourth cars, the blue and gold car and the red car. Michael Andretti and his father, Mario Andretti, behind him. A lot of drama lies ahead of us here at Indianapolis.
I imagine it's hard for me, even though I am a father, to imagine, Jim, the emotions that must be running through Mario now, because as obviously occupied as he is with the job of driving, the fact that his son is right ahead of him on the road, he's probably judging his performance, and I imagine a little part of him is hoping nothing goes wrong.
No way I could imagine being in that position. It just isn't. So there are the four leaders in the early laps of the Indianapolis 500. Mears and Sneva and Andretti, father and son. Back at Indy, and there is Michael Andretti in the blue and gold car, passing Tom Sneva for second place. A duel's been going on for that second spot, and now Michael Andretti, the 21-year-old, youngest driver in the race, remember, has taken over second place.
An amazing pass. You know, Jim, you described him at the top of the show as a babe among masters. I wonder if maybe we shouldn't be revising that estimate right now.
The way he's driving, we certainly should. Rick Mears, of course, still leading the race in the Roger Penske prepared number 6 car. Some of the crowd looking on. There's Jeff Brabham in the pits. The steering wheel, you know, is removable for safety purposes and for quickness, getting in and out of the car, even in the pit area. There's the look down the straightaway. Let's have another look at that pass. Look at Michael.
Well, that was the absolutely perfect pass. He was faster through the turn than Sneva was, drafted him for a moment coming down the early part of the front straight here, and made an absolute copybook pass. Wonder who he learned that from.
I can't imagine. Every year we have many people watching, I think, who are not dyed-in-the-wool motor racing fans. Drafting, of course, means getting in the slipstream of the car, and you get an actual boost in horsepower, right? And speed.
Well, yes, because the car, oops, here comes Gordon Johncock into the pits. This is unexpected, Jim. It's way too early in the race. We would expect the car to go about 24, 25 laps before a stop.
Johncock, remember, a two-time winner of this race, started in the middle of the second row. One of the favorites here.
And one of the fastest, too, in practice. He did run a lap of 2:09 or I think 2:10 just barely the other day. So this is very discouraging. This is a man that could have won the race.
There's George Snyder going by in that number 4. He's back in the back a bit. Up front, though, it is Rick Mears and Michael Andretti moving in on Mears. Well, this kid is really moving.
Yeah, and this is the acid test, too, because it is in heavy traffic. Running alone on the track, that is something Michael Andretti's been able to do all month during practice. He has never had an occasion to run in a pressure situation like this.
Now, is George Snyder there holding up Mears a little bit, allowing Michael to move in?
Well, I don't think he's doing that intentionally. Remember,
no, I mean,
in the race.
because he's slower.
Yeah. All right, well, now this is critical, of course, because Mears has gotten clear and Andretti is stuck behind. This could make him vulnerable to Sneva, who's right behind Mears.
That's right.
Because when you're held up in a turn,
right
Jim,
behind Andretti.
I'm sorry, Andretti. Because if you're held up in a turn, as Michael was, you see?
There goes Sneva.
Yep.
The white car number 1 moving right alongside, and now past Michael Andretti.
Terrific race.
But Andretti driving intelligently, not just going flat out saying he's not going to get by me. When it's inevitable, he goes.
Oh, yes, and I don't think, here's Howie Holmes.
Yep. Teammate of Tom Sneva started in the middle of the first row, into the pits. Well, looks reasonably, well, they raised it up. The pneumatic jack, so they got a problem there.
Well, that's a disappointment. Howdy, of course, doing so well. It's, you know, Jim, I don't believe that when Michael Andretti was passed that it was a mistake on his part. There are times when you just get in a situation and the driver behind you sets you up perfectly, and that's exactly what Sneva did.
That's my point, and Michael accepted it. When the guy beat you, let him beat you, then go after him again later.
Exactly. It's not the last lap yet.
Far from it. There's Sneva in the white car. Remember, he's in second place. Mears is still 200 yards up in front of him. There, he flashed by. There's Sneva. There goes Michael Andretti.
Jim, you know, the leading 3 cars are all these March cars. They're all made in England. They're all the same kind of car, and they have virtually the same engine, same horsepower, about 750. So when you see differences out here, it's differences in the driver, and differences in the way the cars are set up at this particular moment in the race.
Well, let's see, I believe of the 33 cars, 30 of them are Marches. These cars you're talking about made in England.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Look at Holmes. They've now got the bonnet off the car, and it's going to take a while.
He must be dejected because this has got to be, has had to have been the best opportunity that he might have ever had to win this race, driving for the Mayer team that has prepared his car and Tom Sneeva so brilliantly all during the month.
The Mayer team was here with great success a few years ago with Johnny Rutherford winning the race for them. They've been out of it for a few years and come back this year with great power in their usual organization. The 400,000 still look on. We're at Indy.
This is what they call the spark box, the ignition system in Gordon John Cox's car, and this is why he came in. He was getting an intermittent kind of thing with his ignition. Of course, the engine was cutting in and out. As you can see, it's a quick disconnect. You've got a 6-prong, a 4-prong, and a 2-prong plug. This part goes to the distributor itself. They were able to get it out of the car, put another replacement in. He's back out, and fortunately running very smoothly. So this was the culprit.
Okay, Bill Fleming with that report from the pits on Gordon John Cox's problem. There are the standings as of now. The race goes on. Look at the racing on the course here at Indianapolis. There's the leader, Rick Mears, right behind him, Tom Sneeva. Passing a slower car here. Well, Sneeva got tucked in behind. He couldn't quite make it.
That's right. That slower car is driven by Dick Simon, the oldest man in the race, Jim, 50 years old. There's Sneeva, though. He won't take too long to get by him. However, Sneeva is now vulnerable to the same kind. In other words, he stalled out a little bit. And here comes Michael Andretti with his dad, Mario. Mario is now right behind Michael. You'll see them there. There's Mario pulling out to pass Michael.
And the father has passed the son and now passes Dick Simon, or is about to, yes, does pass Dick Simon. And next we'll have the youngest driver, did not quite pass Dick Simon.
No.
And a drop back behind him.
No, that's showing off.
Is that Michael, I think, pulling into the pits?
Pulling.
We'll double check it. That looked like
Yep,
Michael's car coming in.
Peeling out. Now, is this too early for the first pit stops is the question.
Yep, there he is.
Yes, it seems to me, Jim, unless he's been using fuel at a tremendous rate, something is wrong. And yet it looks routine.
It certainly does so far.
Now, all right, this shouldn't take more than about 18 seconds. These early stops, by the way, you see they don't change tires. The fuel flows in very fast, Jim, because of what they call the head pressure. There's so much fuel in the tank. See, 14 seconds, that's a terrific stop. And that's why they don't change tires in the first stops, because they know that they're going to be able to refuel so fast, they don't want to waste time changing the tire.
Now, the question is whether the other lead cars are burning fuel at almost the same rate as Michael Andretti. If so, they'll be coming in for pit stops very shortly. What a job these pit crews do here, as a matter of fact.
Yes, when you think of what they're able to accomplish in a short time, just 5 men doing the work.
And now those pit stops are continuing. There's A.J. Foyt. A.J. running back in the pack at the moment in car number 14, looking, remember, for his 5th Indianapolis 500 victory at the age of 49.
Jim, to the driver, these pit stops are not the calm things they may look like to us. They're very disorienting, because when you've been out on the track at 200 miles an hour, the track is very smooth. The other cars are going about the same speed that you are. Of course, here's Rick Mears in the Roger Penske pit.
He's the leader in the race, or was until he came in here.
The chaos is when you're sitting still. You feel that fuel flowing into that tank behind you. It actually presses you forward a bit in the seat and cools your back for a split second, incidentally.
Okay, we've had Michael Andretti into the pits. Now we've had Rick Mears into the pits, but Tom Sneeva is still on the track. Coming down low, however, let's see. Doesn't look like yes, is he? Look at that move coming into the pit.
Sneeva, I have been watching this man for the last few years come in and out of the pits, and notice how bumpy that pit road is, by the way. He has got to be the most ambitious man in and out of the pits. I mean, that was a very dangerous move that he made, a very gutsy move, because he came so close to the end of that pit wall. But he does this all the time in the pit.
Dangerous to somebody unlike Sneeva. To him, he knew what he was doing.
True. Everything is relative, and this is the hardest charging man, I think, who's raced at Indy for the last 4 or 5 years. A very heady driver. He keeps his emotions in one compartment, and his, you know, his logic in another.
Used to call him Mr. Second Place simply because he finished second 3 times here, which is not so bad. Here it is again in slow motion.
All right, now, maybe it doesn't look that dangerous, I'll grant, but when he's still going 190 miles an hour right here, and you see he really just pulls in at the last minute, and if anything had come just a little bit wrong, and he T-boned into the end of that wall.
Okay, now here we have Mario Andretti into the pits. So the son has been in, now the father is in. All of the leaders pitting here under the green, and they appear to be using fuel at a rather fast rate.
Take a close look at this car because it's a Lola car, one of the very few cars that aren't marches in the race.
And off goes Mario. All of the leaders back on the race course. We're back in Indianapolis where the leader following the first pit stops is now Mario Andretti at age 44. The sentimental favorite here always. Of course, he won the race once, but you look down through the years and you see next to his name notations like engine detonation, lost wheel, burned piston, flag, wreck, out of fuel, wrecked, flag, broken headers, engine seized, accident. Year after year, time after time, something has always happened to frustrate Mario Andretti's bid for a second win in the Indianapolis 500. And to add to the drama this year, one of the men pursuing him, and pursuing him fairly closely, is his own son. The value of life, Mario Andretti said. Remembering its value, or you're laying it on the line. Mario Andretti leading the Indianapolis 500 right now. In second place, Tom Sneva in the white car. And behind him now, Al Unser Jr., number 7, has passed Rick Mears for third place.
It's an interesting repetition, isn't it, at the end of the race last year, Jim, when Tom Sneva and Al Unser Jr. were so close together. There's Al Unser Jr. just showing Sneva that he is there. That's all, trying to rattle him a little bit by dodging around behind him, occupying Sneva's mirrors.
Now let's see if that other car is going to get in between them. At least it did momentarily. Al Unser's in the black car, number 7. There he is moving down to get past that car at age 22. In his second Indianapolis 500. There's Sneva, number 1, the defending champion in the race.
So that's the lead, Jim.
The lead,
excuse me. You know, at this point, of course, how meaningful is it really? But Tom Sneva, look at that.
Wild spin, that is Spike Gelhausen. Spike, it looks like he's pulled out of it all right this time. That is the 3rd time we've seen something like that happen to him. 1978 he wrecked here, 1980 he wrecked. Here it is again.
Jim, here he comes off the turn. There's no, one might think that it was a driving error there. It looks as if he just came off wrong, but having driven these cars, you know, Jim, I don't think you can ever say for sure that it's a driving error because there's so many different things that can go wrong with one of these very complex cars.
Okay, and again, Tom Sneva has slipped past Mario Andretti into the lead in the 1984 Indianapolis 500. The yellow flag is out. So we're going to take a break here. We'll be back for a lot more racing at Indy. Again, we're back at Indy. They're still under the yellow flag right now after Spike Gelhausen's spin. And again, he appears to be all right. We have the facility through Comtrack Radio to talk to Gordon Johncock. Sam, see if you can get him now.
Gordon, this is Sam Posey. Can you hear me?
Sam. I have a copy on you, Sam.
Okay. How is the crosswind? Is it windy?
Yes, it is. We do have a crosswind, especially coming on a 2 that's pushing the car up to the wall pretty bad. And we also have an oily condition out here. There are several cars, evidently, that are oiling. They oiled the first part of the race, and then it kind of quit, and now it is back to being a little oily again.
Has Gelhausen's crash put any extra debris on the track?
Negative. He didn't hit anything. He just made several spins and slid up to the wall. No damage.
Gordon, I'm sorry you had that problem early on. How do you feel about things now?
Well, the car seems to be working pretty well right now. All we can do is just keep plugging away here and run as fast as we can. Hopefully we can make up a few laps. I don't know.
Thank you very much, Gordy. Good luck to you.
Gordon Johncock speaking with Sam from his race car. We said you'd hear periodic reports from Jackie Stewart. We're a quarter of the way, 50 laps, and here's Jackie.
Looking back after 50 laps, the first thing that impressed me was Rick Mears. This is the 6th year of him straight leading this race. This is impressive. The other two impressive things, Al Unser Jr. has come from 15th position right up to 4th position right now. And Mario Andretti's son Michael driving a magnificent race, showing a when he was stalking Tom Sneva, who of course is the master at that. But Tom's car and Mario's car are so much bigger. Guerrero from Colombia, by the way, is up into 5th position. He was the man that during qualification had part of his bodywork come undone and fly off the car, so that's pretty good that he's got himself up to 5th position here. Now let's have a look at the standings after 50 laps. So Mario Andretti is in the lead, Rick Mears second, Tom Sneva third, Al Unser Jr. in 4th position, Guerrero the rookie in 5th, and remember I did mention we thought while he was qualifying when the body fell off that a Zeus fastener had come undone, but in fact we find out that air got underneath the bodywork and that was the reason for it. Danny Ongai is up to 6th, Senior is in 7th, Theo Fabi 8th, Michael Andretti is 9th, and Al Hobart, another rookie, making up the top 10. Now, I'd like to run through the whole 33 cars here, but the Speedway have a problem in their scoring. They haven't been able to give us the rest of the field, so I do apologize for that. Cars out of the race. Jeff Brabham, sad for Australia after only 1 lap with a fuel line. Two-time world champion Emerson Fittipaldi from Brazil with an engine failure. He was out in 39. And Spike Gelhausen, he had a spin in lap 49. Now, the leader's average speed so far, 186.657 miles per hour. We've only had 1 yellow flag, and now we're going to go green.
The green flag out again at Indianapolis. So they're racing again at speed. Mario Andretti, still the leader. Right behind him, though, that white car, number 1. Another car in between them now. Or no, wait a minute, that's Mears in between them, isn't it? Yeah, Mears in between them in 2nd place. So it's Mario, followed by Rick Mears, followed by number 1, Tom Sneva, followed by number 7, Al Unser Jr., moving low on Sneva right now.
That's as good as the racing gets. Look at them.
Boy.
Cut back.
The red car is Mario Andretti. The yellow car is Rick Mears, now taking the lead. The white car behind them is Sneva. The black car, Al Unser Jr. There are the 4 of them. Oh, it's this racing or not. Now remember, at Indianapolis, they now closed up under the yellow flag as they went around, which years ago they were not able to do.
That's right. It does make for a much more exciting, if fractionally less pure race. The man who appears to be leading here at this point, Scott Brayton, is at least 1 lap behind. It's really the yellow car there of Rick Mears that is the leader at this point.
Father and son situation here getting more complex now as we have Andretti in 2nd place, immediately followed by the son of another driver.
Yeah, Alan.
And of course by Sneva, who now moves ahead of Andretti. So it is now directly Andretti and the son of Al Unser in that order in 3rd and 4th place.
Well, I said at the beginning, Jim, I thought there might be a little pacing because of the possibility of running out of fuel. I see no evidence of that. I can't remember as much of a cut and thrust race. You see Sneva pulling out past Brayton there.
And we also saw young Al about to pass Mario, I think. We'll get back to that.
Don't you have the feeling this is the best racing we've seen at Indianapolis in years?
It certainly is so far. Pure racing all the way.
Yeah, I think the fact that so many of the cars are virtually identical. As I said at the outset, 29 of these cars have the same chassis and the same engine.
There, number 7, the black car, is Al Unser Jr. He has moved past the red car, number 3, of Mario Andretti. So Al Unser Jr. in 3rd place.
And right behind is Roberto Guerrero from Colombia, the ex-Formula 1 driver, having his first taste of Indy competition. He's a rookie.
And driving very well.
There's Danny Sullivan in the center of your screen in the black car.
Look at the immensity, the size of the crowd. Penske looking on.
Penske making many of the strategic decisions that are essential to winning this race. Jim, long gone is the day when the driver wins it alone. And of course, Roger, as a brilliant businessman, has said, you know, he makes strategic decisions every day.
Look at this, Sneva closing in on Mears again. Nobody can pull away. Each time a leader seems to pull away for about 1 lap, the man behind him closes in again.
Right now, the factor here, I believe that's Tom Gloy. In between them, Jim, he's the rookie, and he pulled way out of the way.
Yep.
So no interference there from Tom Gloy, the rookie, 37 years old, as he is lapped.
How close to that wall do they come exiting the turns?
Well, during the days of practice that I was here, Jim, I saw tire after tire with scuff marks on it from touching the wall. I would suspect that at least half the drivers in this race will touch the wall at some point or another.
But when they're not touching the wall, if they do it perfectly, how far are they from the wall? You're talking about 3 or 4 inches?
3 or 4 inches.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the reason they pull well away from the wall going down the straight, as you see them doing now, is to reduce turbulence between the side of the car and the wall. That's the reason for that. And the little extra distance that you have to move to, you know, get the car out into the center of the road and back doesn't really mean anything.
And so it's Rick Mears in the lead, Tom Sneva in second place, and Al Unser Jr. in third place, and they couldn't be closer without touching.
Oh, this is absolutely magnificent racing. You see the black groove there that's starting to develop. The track, I reckon, is not in tip-top condition. It's a little bit oily. There's a crosswind that's causing the understeer, the front of the car, to wash out a little bit as you come out of turn 2.
A crash. We can't pick it up yet. I can't see who it is. Where the parts everywhere. Yellow flag out. This could be a very bad. Oh, this is terrible.
Could be the worst crash that we have seen in Indy in years, Jim. I'm afraid the driver
rescue equipment
is in
there as usual. I'm afraid.
It looks like
let's
Pat
not say
Bedard.
it. Let's not say it until we are sure. Could be Pat Bedard, the racing writer turned driver, a man in his 40s. Yes, he's in there.
I'm afraid
he's in there in the front of the car. The engine gone.
Front gone.
However, that part is all in one piece.
Well, yes, it is. And these are survival.
Two of the worst crashes we ever saw were Tom Sneva and Danny Ungaius. Ungaius particularly, we thought might have been dead.
Yes.
And he's back in the race. Sneva's only back in, but fighting for the lead.
Really?
Pat, let's see, is his head
Jim,
moving?
I don't know, but it's very encouraging to see that survival capsule
and there's no
to be
fire.
Very much intact. There is no fire. There hasn't been serious fire here for quite a few years.
Yeah. Well, let's see what we have in slow motion. See if we can see what happened. We just came in on the end of that. Still working on the driver. Tentatively identified as Pat Bedard. Well, you see that smoke. That's not it. Here it is over here.
Yeah.
Into the inner wall.
The inner wall
flying.
there. Incredible.
Well, you see it.
Violence. Well, now you know what happens when something goes wrong at 200 miles an hour. You know, sometimes, you know, Jim, you really don't understand the speed.
But the flying parts, again, do dissipate the energy. They, in a sense, give the driver a chance, rather than a solid car that gives all the force to him.
Well, absolutely right. But it's only when you see something like that that the full knowledge of what 200 miles an hour means. You know? Incredible.
Well, this one looks tough. Let's take a break. Yellow flag still out of Indianapolis, and that is the car number 30 of Danny Sullivan. Now, something happened to Danny, presumably as a sort of aftermath of the terrible crash of Pat Bedard, on whom they are still working. Now, look at this.
All right, there's the debris, of course, from the Bedard accident. Now, watch the right of your screen, and you will... Danny Sullivan appears going what it seems to be much too fast. He hits Roberto Guerrero. That's the white car just to the right of Sullivan, who's now getting up into the air. Other cars dodging. It wasn't serious, but then again, it looks like an accident that in some ways really need not have occurred, Jim, had everyone slowed down enough.
Certainly could have been serious. Jackie Stewart's been watching all this. Get his reaction to it.
What you've just seen is not a racing car accident. It's like an aircraft accident. The total destruction of a car at that speed is incredible. Now, as I speak to you now, we have had no reports on Patrick Bedard's condition. But really, in my opinion, it's a synonymous accident with these very high speeds that I spoke of at the opening. In my opinion, they are excessively high. Only last night I spoke to the great Parnelli Jones, and I spoke to A.J. Foyt, and I spoke to the man who's fastest round this speedway, Tom Sneaver. They all said that they were all going too fast, because if something did go wrong, it was difficult to see life expectancy being in the correct conditions. It's this type of accident that I think should convince us that we do have to go slower around this racetrack and lots others.
As Jackie said, there's still no report on Pat Bedard. That tells us this is a little earlier shot. Maybe we can tell more, Sam.
All right, do you see that it's between turn 3 and 4? It's coming off turn 3. Now, let's watch here.
Into the inner wall. You'll see a flash of fire, I think.
Yeah.
Left side of your screen.
Yeah, that's it. All right. Now, that is not the fuel tank exploding. It could be friction. It could be the oil tank. And as we said earlier, the incredible energy that is absorbed by that tumbling and by the parts coming off, frankly, Jim, is what encourages me to hope for Pat. And I think if people want to see crashes like this at all, it's just because the enormity of a crash like this validates and proves the speed. Here's the crew. Pat
It's always
Bedard.
pit crew there, yeah. Now Pat on the stretcher being put into the ambulance. There's the helicopter. We're told Pat Bedard is in that helicopter, will be airlifted to Memorial Hospital here in Indianapolis, just 2 or 3 minutes by helicopter. And he'll get instant attention. But now, look here what we have. Bobby retaking the lead from Danny Ungaius.
And look who's ghosting along right behind them there, young Allens.
That's right, Allenser Jr. at age 22. I think we're going to get another report now on the condition from Dr. Bach. Here we go, Larry.
Can you give us an update on Patrick's condition?
Yes, we just loaded him into the helicopter. I'm sure, as you're aware, we're still listing him as serious, but he is waking up. He appears to be reacting appropriately, and there's no major problems at this time. We'll still list him serious till they complete their evaluation down at the Methodist Trauma Center.
Any specific injuries you can list at this time?
Nothing that we can tell you right now.
Isn't that an unbelievable report? I mean, it's an entirely optimistic report as far as it can be at this time from Dr. Bach. After what you saw Pat Bedard go through, that he is regaining consciousness at this point, talking to people, it's just, well, stay with the story.
Just as you couldn't possibly believe that cars could lap here at over 200 miles an hour routinely. There goes Teo Fabi down in. And look at Sneva. Sneva coming on with little Al Unser. Sneva blowing right by to take the lead.
White car of Tom Sneva, the defending champion of Indianapolis. Now here is Teo Fabi in the pits. He'll start very neatly, changing rubber on the right side.
Precision of the crew, but this is the crew that failed last year on Fabi's second pit stop. Do you recall? Not the crew, but they had a problem with the O-ring and their refueling. This gives you an idea. Even when something looks routine, something violent can go wrong in a moment.
That was certainly a very professional pit stop, though.
It was. Again, I point out the roughness of that pit lane. Jim, if there's anything that worries us, I think year in and year out, look at that. Young Al pulling out, and now neck and neck with Tom Sneva.
Young Al Unser moving back ahead of the veteran Tom Sneva, the defending champion here. Wow. Terrific racing. So far, good news on Pat Bedard. Danny Sullivan, of course, also was involved in the crash, but he's back in the garage area now. In fact, we're going to have a word with him. So it's now
Danny, you got involved in the Bedard incident. What happened?
Well, actually, I got involved in an incident after Pat's accident. He had his moment and big accident there, I guess, in 3 and 4. We slowed down coming down the back chute. The yellow was already on. Everybody was getting in line. And then as we went by the accident on the left-hand side, we were up against the wall. Somebody in front decided to stop and have a look at the accident and slowed right down. Fabi locked up his brakes trying to miss it. Went up and closed up the gap toward the wall. Guerrero closed it up even closer, and I had nowhere to go and drove over the back of Guerrero's wheel.
Danny, do you know who it was who stopped suddenly in front of all of you?
No, I wish I did, but it wouldn't do any good. You know, I just can't believe that somebody'd stop on a racetrack to look at an accident.
You went over Roberto's wheels, all right?
Right, I went over his left rear with my right front, and that was it.
Was the debris on the racetrack a factor at all in your incident?
No, they had us pushed up a little bit tight on the wall, but there was still no problem. The only thing was that I couldn't go to the left because one of the marshals was standing there, and I certainly couldn't hit him. So it was just a matter of trying to get it stopped, and I couldn't.
Well, frustrated Danny Sullivan, but he is at least totally well. There's Al Unser Jr., the leader in the Indianapolis 500 at the age of 22. The youth movement has certainly arrived this year in Indy. We've been saying for so many years there's got to be changing of the guard. Well, it's underway right now. Gradual, but it's underway. Up, and there is Al coming into the pits. Leader into the pits, making Tom Sneva in white car number 1 the leader again.
I started to mention earlier the roughness of that pit lane. You see him bumping in there. It's the only part of the track that hasn't been resurfaced in recent years.
You may wonder why they don't have half a dozen or a dozen people over the wall there. Well, the rule is only 5 people over the wall in any pit.
Obviously, as you can see, they are not changing tires here, only refueling, and so it's a relatively rapid stop, and he's away.
A neat stop for Al Unser Jr., but at this moment, Tom Sneva is again the leader. See how long that lasts. There's Teo Fabi of Italy coming into the pits at Indianapolis, the man who sat on the pole last year, who has already announced that he's not coming back to Indianapolis, or he says anytime in the future he's going to drive a couple of years of Formula One. That's his intention, and then hang it up. He doesn't want to stay in the sport too long. Fabi into the pits. There is the leader, Tom Sneva, in car number 1.
By the way, Fabi going in so slowly, Jim, is to suggest some kind of a problem there. Have a look at that groove, the dark groove. That, of course, is the safe racing line. Where well, there's the story, I guess.
Okay, Fabi out of the car. Looks like that is probably it for the day. We have seen cars get back in the race after the driver got out, but not too often.
Oh, I'm sure he's out of it now, though, as far as having any shot to win. I was going to say, there's that dark groove, that gray area above it is treacherous. That's where the dust accumulates, you know, that's blown off the tires and the cars and so on. It's almost like an ice skating rink up there, so you won't see people. You know, there's Sharon Sneva, of course, Tom Sneva's wife.
He's pretty well under control about things. Well, he's got things pretty well.
He's chewing the gum, though.
Yeah.
I would be, too.
There's our man out there, Tom Sneva.
For example, right there would be a reason to be nervous. Passing Chris Kniper, who stays cleanly out of the way, though. But still, when you pass any car at 190 miles an hour, whoa!
Whoops, Jim. Gordon Johncock coming into the pits. Look out.
Look at that. Gordon Johncock.
Watch out for the... Oh, wow. How he missed everybody, I don't know.
Look at the guy behind him that he almost hit. Gordy throwing his steering wheel out.
He's moving.
I think he's okay. He's not seriously hurt. Yeah,
he's pointing to the front of the car. He may have his feet caught in there, you know.
All right, there he is, the right of your screen. It's amazing. I was just talking about that groove. He was wide of the groove, Jim. He was right behind Sneva. Gordy, in the few laps before this, had been doing speeds at about 204 miles an hour.
Look what could have happened. Look at the end of that pit wall. If you hit that, you're finished.
Incredible.
And if his speed had been greater, he could have flipped over that wall.
This was fraught from moment to moment. Now he could have hurt somebody other than himself.
This is the closest we've seen to the kind of a pit crash that we've dreaded for years in Indianapolis. Had the speed been more tremendous, it would have been awful.
Remember, he hurt himself very badly, hurt his ankle last summer in Michigan, and I just hope he hasn't re-injured it in some way.
He did look like he was in pain, no question. Jackie Stewart, would you like to have a look at this?
Well, Jim, I'd see Gordon Johncock doing something here that only spells an enormous amount of enthusiasm. It's one of our super slow motion camera shots here. He steered into the wall after he hit it with his rear right. He steered into the wall to try and stay on the wall all the way down the racetrack. I've hit the wall just at that very same place as Gordy did, and I know the feeling. It's an enormous jar, but he did something that a younger driver simply wouldn't have done. He really steered into the wall to try and rub off as much speed and stay in the racetrack rather than come across and be hit by other cars coming on. But what could have happened here with all these gas tanks there, I fear to think if it happened in different ways. If he had climbed over that pit wall, it would have been absolutely awful. And I did see there, in fact, a parked car, which I suspect might have been Teo Fabi's car. That could also been adding the trouble. But my goodness, he handled it well, but it could have been much more serious than it's turned out.
Return to Indianapolis. Jim McKay here with Sam Posey in the booth, and there is Mears going way down low, trying to put a lap on Guerrero, the fourth place car, and doing it. What a move.
Well, right down on the grass. Of course, it was in the middle of the straightaway, so there isn't great danger. Let's have another look at it if we can. Yeah. All right, here it is. Of course, he initiates the move coming off that turn. That's turn 2.
Yeah, we're talking about the yellow car now behind the whitish car.
Right. The orange car just ahead of him, Scott Brayton. He's being lapped. Now, of course, here's the drafting maneuver by Mears. This is when he's allowing Guerrero to blast the air out of the way for him, so he, in effect, can slingshot by. Of course, Guerrero is going out around Brayton at the same time, so Mears has to come right out next to the grass. Of course, if he'd gone onto the grass, Jim, that would have been it. He would have spun like a whirling dervish down that straightaway, but he didn't.
Just a matter of no more than a foot.
Yeah.
Probably just inches.
Neat
staying
move.
Away from the grass.
Neat. I really like that.
Admire it.
Oh, I think it's terrific. Rick Mears
with good reason. We're at lap 127, by the way, returning to the action now. Lap 127, and, well, I should think that the physical demands might be coming into play pretty soon. We'll be talking about that. There is Rick Mears, the leader, a young man who is in very good physical condition, keeps himself in shape, as just about all of the drivers do today.
Of course, but conditioning or not, think of the G-forces, 2.5 to 3 lateral G-forces in those two.
Rick Mears of Bakersfield, California. Is he in physical shape? Well, you, Sam, talked to him a little bit earlier about the physical demands of the sport.
It's never much of a problem at this track because you don't have the banking. You get to Atlanta or Michigan, those kind of places, the high banks, there's where you really feel it, and that's where it can get to you. But here you kind of get into you feel it at first. Your arms get heavy. Your legs, your left leg is being mashed over against your right leg. And, you feel those things at the start of the race, and say for the first 20 or 30 laps. And then pretty soon you get acclimated to it, and you're almost immune to it. And you're just thinking about what you're doing and what the car is doing, and all that just becomes irrelevant, so to speak. You just no longer think about it.
Rick Mears, the leader. 200 miles an hour they showed him on the last lap. Imagine that.
Incredible. You know, Jim, there's a correlation possibly between that speed and what we were just talking about with Rick Mears and the fitness issue, which is that it's cooler now. It's shady here. It's cloudy. And cooler weather makes for higher speeds on the track because the engines produce more horsepower and it's easier on the drivers. So maybe it isn't so bad today, which means we may get better racing. This race is moving along toward its conclusion now.
There has been a forecast of rain sometime this afternoon. As you said, it's overcast and cooler right now. It could come in, but at the moment it looks okay.
Ooh, notice how close. Ooh. But that is the Rick Mears trademark. He seems to be very comfortable slicing very close to things. There are several other drivers through history that have been like that. Jim Clark was that way, the great Ronnie Peterson. So it has precedence in the sport.
Well, into the pits comes the car that's been in second place, Al Unser Jr. Al Unser Jr. into the pits in his silver bullet, as he calls it. Let's see. Well, this looks a little more than routine, you think?
No, standard refueling. They're not changing the tires.
Just talking to him.
Oh, wait a minute.
No.
No.
They seem to be walking rather than
if it was
running.
A standard stop, he'd be somewhere in turn 1 by now, Jim. I think I called that one wrong.
Well, I saw them walking instead of doing their usual balletic number of, dancing almost around the car.
Well, whatever it was sudden and total. This is not good.
No, there comes his wheel out of the car.
Yeah.
He's going to get out of the car. Gee, he's been running so well all day in the second Indy 500.
Well,
young Al Unser.
He certainly covered himself with glory. Again today, he was so good here last year, in my view, even though he didn't have a high finish, because the car didn't run that well during the day. Now, of course, he had many, many laps in the lead. Young Al Unser, who will win this race. You just know it someday very soon. Huh?
That's a forecast from you, eh?
Well, I don't know. I think so. What do you think?
Haven't seen your man Al Holbert so far, whom you predicted would be in fourth
He's
place.
doing all right. Al Holbert's running
well, he's in the top 10.
Yeah, he's doing great.
Rick Mears, however, is the leader. Very comfortable at this moment. Bill Fleming, I think he's going to have a word, Bill is, with Al Unser Jr.
I'm with Al Unser Jr., who obviously is heartbroken at this point because, Al, you were running second when you had to drop out. What happened?
Well, the engine started season. It was something in a crank bearing, I believe, or something of that kind.
A bearing?
Yeah, something in the motor. It just, my water temp went real sky high, and it just lost a couple cylinders.
We had an unofficial observation there was a hole in your radiator.
I didn't know about that. Never knew about that.
Well, that certainly could account for the high temp, and then, of course, with the engine getting overheated and burning a bearing.
Yeah, it could happen. I just know the motor went dead on me, and we had to bring it in.
I'll tell you one thing, it does prove to you just how tough it is, and to win out here, and the fact that your dad won 3 times is really remarkable.
Yes, it is. He's a great champion, and the car was running good. It was handling great. You know, they could outrun me down the straightaways, but I could outrun them in the corners, and it seemed like my average speed was quicker than what they could do, so we were just trying to lead it.
That young man has an awful lot of racing knowledge in his head at age 22. There we have the leader, Rick Mears, and now we only have 2 cars on the same lap. Just Rick Mears and Tom Sneva. There you see Sneva in car number 1, defending champion. He's not out of it yet. This could be quite a finish. Still the same situation. Rick Mears in the lead. Tom Sneva in second place. There you see the relationship on the racetrack between the 2 cars. So it's a good long way back to Sneva, but he does seem to be infinitesimally eating into the lead of Mears at this moment. Al Unser Sr. in the pits.
This is the much fabled Penske pit crew in action, and actually not making that great an exit from the pit. So you're reminded a little bit about a bobsledding, Jim, from the Winter Olympics, pushing out of the vehicle.
Or even your sport of luge, the Winter Olympics.
Well,
there are the standings. Mears and Sneva on the same lap. 1 lap down, Roberto Guerrero. What a debut at Indianapolis for him so far.
These road racers that are coming into this sport, I say this, you know, with some pride, having been a road racer myself, have the kind of all-around skills that it takes to adapt to this kind of racing. I might also say, all right, obviously,
all right, here he comes into the pits.
Yep.
Leader into the pits, normal up to this point. Seems to be coming in at a normal speed.
Now this, you know, would not be the same crew that just refueled Al Unser Sr. You know, the Penske pit has entirely separate crews.
Right.
This is a different group going into action here.
And at this moment, Tom Sneva becomes the leader in the race.
But of course he hasn't pitted, so he will have to pit. So there's a good battle starting to shape up between Sneva and Rick Mears, who you see here. Good pit stop for Rick Mears.
Has the making, the possibility of what they call a trophy dash to the finish, huh? Remember when we had Mears a couple of years ago with Gordon Johncock, and he lost the race by 16/100ths of a second?
That was the closest
Well,
finish.
here comes Sneva for his pit stop now.
Of course, the finish you mentioned was the closest ever in the history of Indianapolis. Here's Sneva in. Again, it looks routine. This is the team that's headed by Teddy Mayer and Tyler Alexander, the men that won this race when they ran Team McLaren. Then they went back to Europe and got it done in Formula One. They got squeezed out over there for one reason or another, came back here, formed an entirely new team, got Tom Sneva to head it up, and here they are, looking tough.
Doing extremely well. Sneva headed back out on the race course. Years ago, it used to take them so long to get back up to speed, but it doesn't anymore. They're up almost immediately. Rick Mears still leading at Indianapolis. Tom Sneva in second place. He leads by about 10 seconds in the race right now. What we'll be watching is whether Sneva begins to chew into that lead of 10 seconds. Jack Arute right now is down with the team leader, Roger Penske.
Here in the pits with Roger Penske, and Roger, you're 11 seconds ahead at this time with Rick Mears. Are things going according to plan?
Well, hopefully we can make it on one more stop. Everything, we put a set of tires on that time, so we don't have to put one on the last stop. We just fuel it, and we don't have to make a mistake, maybe a slight wing adjustment, but still a long race to go, just keeping our fingers crossed.
Well, you've been doing a lot of calculating, though, for the fuel consumption. Does it look good right now?
Our fuel mileage has been better than we expected, so we made a long run there so we could try to just make one more stop, and hopefully it'll pay off.
Seems to be the only major problem down here is a lost rear view mirror that came off the left side of Rick Mears' car.
Well, his hair has turned to silver, but the wheels are still turning inside Roger Penske's head as cleverly and as quickly as ever. Here again, his man leading the race, Rick Mears, trying to win the Indianapolis 500 for the second time. There are the standings at this moment. 2 rookies in the top 5. And still Rick Mears leads. We're at about the 149 lap mark of this scheduled 200 lap race, 500 miles here on this 2.5-mile race course. So there's still a bit of a ways to go. Quarter of the race still to go. Bill Fleming right now is down with Tyler Alexander, the crew chief for Tom Sneva. Let's get into that.
Tyler, we just heard a report from Roger Penske over in Rick Mears' pit that they're 11 seconds ahead of you, but you seem to be gaining a little bit. How many pit stops do you have to go?
Well, we have 1 pit stop, and at the moment my watch just said that we're 8.5 seconds behind Mears, and the car's not handling very well. So Tom is talking to me on the radio about some things that we maybe should change on the next pit stop. So we have quite a conversation going, so I'm sorry that I haven't got time to chat to you some more.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, a very busy Tyler Alexander. The most significant thing is it's 8.5 seconds now. It was 11 seconds not too long ago. So despite the handling problems, Tom Sneva here is moving in just a bit by bit, but he's got plenty of time to catch up if he can continue doing that.
Oh, yeah, there's plenty of race left here, and I must admit, I'm moving forward on the edge of my seat. You have that feeling?
I do have that feeling,
I think
yes.
we might be headed for a showdown.
Again, the relationship between the 2 cars on the race course, shorter than it was before.
There's the possibility of some rain. Look.
Up a spin. That is Roberto Guerrero, the rookie who's been running so well, but he's under control.
He didn't hit it, and he didn't stall it, Jim.
What a beautiful job.
He didn't stall it. These cars always stall when they spin. To avoid stalling, you have to whip your foot in on the clutch. You see what I mean?
Yep.
And he did that. That's incredible presence of mind. And I must say, you know, in Formula One, when the turns are slower, they're more apt. Here, of course, Sneva coming in now that there's a yellow out. In Formula One, they're, shall we say, a little more used to spins where they can afford them. And Guerrero, incredible presence of mind. I mean, all right, he lost control, but what he did after that was absolutely brilliant. I mean, you know, I mean, I think so many other people would have wound up in the wall there without any idea why.
Comparatively young in the sport, the young man from Colombia. But here is Sneva in the pits. Remember, that was his crew chief, Bill Fleming was talking to just a minute ago. Now Tom back out again, another efficient pit stop by the Teddy Mayer crew.
Well, the things Tyler spoke of trying to change, they did, of course, make the tires here.
Here comes the leader.
Mears. Changing the rear tires, Jim, as you well know, means changing the handling of the car, because the tires these days are not quite the same diameter. No 2 are quite the same. So you change the tires and you get a little bit different handling combination.
Okay, and there goes Mears back out again. I think it's time now to check in with Jackie Stewart periodically. We're now at the 3/4 mark of the race. Oh, look at that. And here he is.
Before this yellow came out right now, we had quite a spectacular set of circumstances. We had 3 rookies in the top 6. A.J. Foyt had entered the top 10. The Penske Panthers were roaming again with Rick Mears very much in control, it looked at this stage. Mears very controlled. He's been the quiet man of the month here at Indianapolis. Everyone's been paying more attention to Andretti, to the young Charger, so to speak, and Mears has been sneaking up on them all and finds himself in a very good position. Tom Sneva still can't be counted out. Remarkable that the Tyler Alexander, Teddy Mayer team should have the 2 cars that they have entered, fastest and second fastest at the start, and certainly Tom Sneever's not out of this motor race yet. They're still in contention. Now let's look at the order. Rick Mears is leading the race. Tom Sneever in second spot. Al Unser Sr. is in third position. And Al Halbert, who incidentally Sam Posey forecast to finish fourth in this race, he's up to fourth position. That's good. Michael Andretti's in fifth position. Danny Angaius, Guerrero, Rahal, and A.J. Foyt is in ninth position. 10th position, Howdy Holmes. And now cars out of the race. Brabham, Fittipaldi, Gelhausen, they've all gone out. Of course, Patrick Bedard, that horrific accident. And Danny Sullivan, the aftermath of that accident, he broke a wheel and damaged the car. Ganassi had electrical problems, he's out. Derek Daly's has a difficult month of May with handling, and that's been the problem today for him. Bettenhausen. Gordon Johncock, of course, crashed in 103. He's retired from the race. Fabi, and the oldest man in the race, Dick Simon, he's retired from the race. Johnny Rutherford, winning this race 3 times in the past. He's had a very difficult month of May, even qualifying, so he's retired. Al Unser Jr. retired. Kevin Cogan in the only All-American car of Dan Gurney's with a stock block engine. He's retired. Pancho Carter, he's out also. Scott Brayton with transmission went out in one lap of 150. Then the leader's average speed is 162.965 miles per hour. We've had 4 yellow flags.
Continue it does, and here is Mario Andretti, number 3, into the pits. Look at the front wing. He's had an incident on the course, getting out of the car. It looks like the bad luck that has dogged him for the past 15 years here, since he won the race in 1969, has got him again.
Jim, I saw Mario sitting out by the swimming pool the other day. He had his swimming trunks on. He had his cooler sitting by him with his wife. Here comes that incident. Now a replay as he's coming into the pits.
Yeah, Jose La Garza in front of him, is it?
Yes, Garza in the white car.
Yeah,
you see,
coming
Mears
in
is
and
clear.
there.
Yeah, there
Mario
he is.
couldn't avoid him.
No, he couldn't. That's a shame. I was going to say he was sitting by the pool, and he was all ready to go, except there was no water in the pool.
Has that kind of luck at Indianapolis. Bill Fleming is down with a saddened Mario Andretti.
Doggone it, Mario, here you are again, and we have to do an interview under unhappy circumstances, but what happened?
Garza just was all of a sudden just decided to duck in the pits, and apparently, I don't know if he knew where he was going or what, because it looked like he was on the last pit. He was going to stop.
Garza?
Yeah, it looked like he was going to get out of the way. Then all of a sudden he pulled in the fast lane. I couldn't stop. You know, I just hit him.
Mario, you were running about 400 revs slower than anybody else, and I think Darrell was concerned about that. He talked to us about it earlier. Any idea what that problem was?
I had a broken exhaust pipe.
And that would cause that, just a decrease in RPM, huh?
Losing all the
Hey,
power.
listen, let me just ask you one question about this start. How did you feel looking over there at Michael?
Well, he was looking good. He's still looking good. So, hope he brings home the bacon.
Okay, Mario.
Okay, Mario Andretti out of it again at Indy. There is the co-owner of his team, Paul Newman. Yes, the Paul Newman. Might be interesting to meet him a bit. Not Paul Newman, the actor. Paul Newman, the racing man.
It is well known these days that Paul Newman loves racing. And those of us who've seen him drive know he's good at it. He has the sort of talent and determination to have been an Indy driver if he'd begun his career when he was younger. As it is, he's one of the country's top sports car drivers. I asked him what his goals were for his racing.
Well, to avoid being placed in the race car from a wheelchair. We had the Datsun that we're racing. I'm racing with a fellow named Jimmy Fitzgerald, who is older than I am, and so we thought it would be a lot of fun to go to Geritol and see if we could get some sponsorship. You know, the oldest living racers. And I called the fellow who was supposed to make these arrangements, and he said, "You're not going to believe this." I said, "What is it?" He said, "They've decided that they're going for a younger market, and you're too old. So you know that when you're too old for Geritol, you're really old."
This would not be a race which Paul would win. But although he claims he races only to win, it is obvious that driving, whatever the result, seems to have contributed to his extraordinary youthful energy. I asked if it might have helped his acting, too.
Well, I think if you can find a new passion, I think it's likely to bleed over into the old ones, into the ones that are simply dying embers. And I think racing has done that for me. at least that's what Joanne thinks, and she's probably a lot more accurate about what I do than I am. But it certainly has been welcome. It's been slow and painful, but it's been welcome.
Last year, with the movie in the works, with his racing, with his salad dressing company booming, Paul's schedule was so hectic that by the end of the season, he was physically and mentally exhausted. When the last race of the year ended with a crash, I asked Joanne Woodward if she thought he'd quit, and she said he should. Well, times change.
Today, there's no one who supports me more or is more forbearing, who understands. She said, at the end of last year, our daughter was through with juniors in riding, and she was going to get rid of her horses, and I was going to get rid of the cars. And Joanne was so pleased because she said for the last 10 years, every Sunday during the summer, I've either been at a horse show or an automobile race. And she said, I've got other things that I enjoy doing. So Clea did not sell her horses, and I did not get rid of the cars. Joanne had said, I have done my motherly and my wifely duties now for 10 years, and I'm not going to any more races. Well, she was at Atlanta and she was at Long Beach, so so much for that. She's marvelous, and she makes it very comfortable for me to continue.
Paul Newman, the green flag is out again now, however. Rick Mears still leading, car number 6, yellow car, passing the slower car at the moment, Tom Gloy. Still no problems, but still Sneva is edging up. Just, you know, a quarter of a second a lap, maybe something like that. But getting closer, not further away. So again, we could still be setting up for the kind of a finish we had here a couple of years ago with Mears and Johncock. Stay with us. The standings still the same. Rick Mears the leader, Tom Sneva second. But Sneva still gaining bit by bit by bit. Al Holbert has now moved up into 3rd place. The man you said was definitely going to finish 4th. Maybe he's going to fool you.
Oh, I hope so. I think he's a terrific driver. Won Le Mans last year. You know, if we're really headed for a showdown, and it appears we may be, here's what you should know about Sneva and Mears. Sneva is 35, Mears 32. Both are in the very prime of their driving careers, Jim, right now. This is Sneva's 11th start here. Mears is 7th. Each has won once. And, you know, they drive the 2 best teams in Indy racing right now.
Interesting how experience, when you get near the end in Indianapolis, almost inevitably rises to the top. Mears just so smooth. Now, is it conceivable he is cooling it the least little bit and that's why Sneva is gaining on him slowly, or is he just doing that? Oh,
Jim,
here's Scott Brayton.
Yep. That's that V6 Buick engine. This is not the standard engine that almost everyone else has and Rick Mears has. And I don't know if that's the cause of the failure, but here's the yellow flag.
Brings out the yellow again. There is Scott Brayton. Can't tell what the occasion for that has been. This is an opportunity to check in with Bill Fleming again. He's down in the pits. Bill?
Here's something I think that is extremely interesting. On the same number of pit stops, Rick Mears has spent 4 minutes and 21 seconds off the course. Tom Sneva, 4:49. So there's a difference of 28 seconds there, and yet they're only about 8 seconds apart on the course. This, of course, indicates that Tom Sneva is the faster car right now.
You keep your eye on Mears. If he dashes in, you come right in with him.
That was Tyler Alexander. We were able to listen in on the radio. He was talking to Tom Sneva and said, Tom, if Mears ducks into the pit, you come right in with him. Interesting.
Yeah, they mean to cover Mears' moves the way you would cover another boat in a tacking duel in the America's Cup, something like that. Tyler Alexander, extremely experienced crew chief. And so Sneva, of course, himself trying to work out what should be done.
Let's see if we can pick something up again.
We need about 3 more laps, Tom, on the yellow before we dare stop to try to make it to the end. You think we can go 30 under the green?
That's Alexander.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we can make 30 under the green. May run out of fuel on the last lap, but I think we can make 30.
Well, it's going to be close. If they can make 30 laps on the green. They're now on lap 167. They wouldn't quite do it if the green came out now.
No, they might be able to stretch their mileage if Sneva was able to lay out of the throttle a little bit in draft, but I don't think they could also lead that way.
Boy, this is very, very interesting. Yeah. Cerebral stuff right here in Indianapolis. We're still under the yellow. There's Tyler Alexander in the corner, and his car with Tom Sneva on the racetrack. Still under the yellow, and each lap under the yellow gives them a better chance of being able to go up.
Something was wrong with the car. Some sparks came out the back of the car. Tyler, of course, has no idea about that at this point.
I don't know whether they just ran over something or what.
Yeah, he may very well have.
Let's see if we can listen in on them again. There's Tyler. Hold it.
He's coming in. He's got something wrong with the car, he says.
This is the moment he knows.
What's the matter with it? What won't run? Going green.
Can't hear. They said they're
going in. Philly
we're
says
going to go.
Something wrong with it. Something is broke in the back of the car.
We're about to go green. There is the green out, and you heard it. Something is broken in the back of Tom Sneva's car.
There's Sneva now.
Yep,
coming in at the top of the pit lane.
That must have been that flash, brief flash of fire we saw at the back. Sparks.
Just as we thought, it was shaping up for an incredible battle. He comes in with a good head of steam, though, Jim.
Yeah. When he was just in position to get into that trophy dash, that dash to the finish with Rick Mears, if he could have made it on fuel, and he was very close to being able to make it. Okay, but it's all over now.
They're just going through the motions. I mean, the engine obviously is all right. Wasn't a fun. Look, the crewman is pointing to the back there, a suspension member or something
indicating,
like that.
Forget about it.
Yeah, forget about it. They didn't need to top it up with fuel, that's for sure. Incredible how quickly this happened.
Go ahead.
Jim, just as this epic duel appeared to be shaping up, it's over.
Yep. Sneva, the man who won the race last year, trying to become the first repeat winner since Al Unser in 1970 and 71, has failed in that quest after some beautiful virtuoso race driving here this afternoon.
He drove just beautifully today. Highest possible marks.
This, of course, has given Rick Mears a bigger lead than ever.
Hear the crowd there, Jim.
Yep.
They know it. It's a knowledgeable crowd here, and they love a good drive like that. Here's Rick. Now, of course, with a commanding lead. The whole complexion has changed, hasn't it?
It certainly has. It certainly has. The question now just maintaining the car for Rick Mears. Bill Fleming has moved over to Sneva's pit. Here he is.
Well, Tom, it's a dramatic moment in this race, but certainly very undramatic for you. What happened?
Well, I don't know. It looks like something let go in the back of the car, half shaft or something. Fortunately, it happened under the yellow when we were going slow, which is a real break, because if it happens at speed, we get the wall. But it's too bad, because we had the car working. I think we were catching the leader, and it would have been an exciting race.
Actually, you were running faster on the course than he was. I think your only concern with Tyler Alexander, according to the conversation we heard, was fuel. Did you think you could make it with one more stop?
Yeah, we would have had to stop one more time. We weren't concerned about that too much because we knew Mears wasn't getting the mileage we were. I think the car was a little quicker there towards the end, but you got to run 500 miles.
Well, you gave us a heck of a show, Tom.
Thank you.
I think that's the
mood
definition.
has changed considerably here in the Penske pits, and now the race strategy is simple. Wait for 28 laps to go and then come in and take on fuel. When Tom Sneva came by here, coasting into his pits, you could see the change on everybody's face. They broke out into smiles, then they gathered it back up and said, wait a minute, the race isn't over yet.
There's Roger Penske in communication with this driver, with Rick Mears. Now with a great big lead in the race. Let's get a reaction on this from Jackie Stewart, the three-time world champion, with us as always.
Tom Sneva has just demonstrated why he's a real champion. He was driving that car even very slowly and felt a suspension or transmission problem. Had he continued at that time under the green conditions, the chances are he would have lost control of that car. This is what a racing driver has to do. He has to think. It's much more than just driving with sheer talent and natural ability. You've got to be a thinking driver, and that's why people like Tom Sneva win the Indy 500, and that's why they become old racing drivers. There aren't any brave old racing drivers around. Well done, Tom Sneva.
Mears apparently breezing to victory in the Indianapolis 500, and now we get a report that there is some rain falling on the racetrack. Not all the way around, but there is rain now over the racetrack. Still under the green, Sam, but they don't allow much rain to fall before they stop things here.
Well, Rick Mears still running 200 miles an hour plus, though, Jim. And, you know, these tires, which give the car such incredible grip under ideal circumstances, are very treacherous indeed in the wet. They have no grooves in them, whatever. They're slicks. And if there's any water on the road, the cars become unhandleable. I almost thought for a second I saw something on one of the lenses of our cameras. Yep. So now this is a tremendously difficult position for Mears.
It also looked like Mears wiggled a little bit coming out of that last turn.
Yeah, he did. I mean, obviously, he doesn't want to slow down dramatically, but he could lose control completely. I mean, this is a very dangerous situation for him. Of course, he is 2 laps ahead, Jim, of his own teammate.
A while ago, it looked like he would have to battle Tom Sneeve on the race course, have the battle of fuel in the pits. He's eliminated those 2. The only one left is the weather, as you say, with his 2-lap lead, but still he's going at tremendous speed, and it did look like he wiggled a little bit coming out of that one turn. Can't take too much of this moisture on the track.
No, now this is very tough for a driver, Jim, because you can see on your visor, of course, how much rain is falling where you are. But at these speeds, and remember, you're traveling over 100 yards a second at these speeds, it is sometimes hard to pick out, especially this late in the race, what the track conditions might be in the turn ahead of you. In other words, it's a little bit oily out there right now.
Well, there's Kathy Penske, Roger's wife. She doesn't look like it's time to relax at all, and neither does Roger, by the way.
No, the emotions obviously running very, very high there.
Very much so, and no doubt in the race car, although Mears has to keep his totally under control and concentrate on the work at hand. What's it like inside that cockpit? Let's listen to Jackie Stewart.
Here at the Speedway, when the drivers go down the front straight and on the back stretch, a lot of time is spent addressing the instruments in the cockpit. Now, I'm sitting in a Chevrolet Corvette now, which is very similar to most modern cars today. They're extremely sophisticated in the inside, with many instruments and dials and knobs and switches to address. Let's have a look at some of them. Looking at it, it looks quite bland until I switch it on. Suddenly, the world lights up. And when I start the engine up, suddenly we get movement as well as color. We have analog, which means there's movement here of the rev counter, and a digital readout of the speed of the engine. But the whole dashboard itself, in fact, is a bizarre range of colors and shapes and switches and dials. Can you imagine addressing turn 1 at 215 miles an hour and having to read all of this? By comparison, the instrument panel in Al Unser's race car is stark. The steering wheel, much, much smaller, but the driver can see all of the instruments through the spokes of his steering wheel. And another difference, there are switches on the steering wheel. Here, the kill switch. If an emergency occurs, he can switch electricity off, and by pressing this button, be in two-way conversation with his pit crew. Another big difference is this steering wheel comes off. In the case of an emergency, the driver is allowed out of the car much faster. The instrument in the center of the panel is the rev counter. That's to say the engine speed. The dial on the left is for the water and oil temperature. The orange needle is oil temperature, the white needle indicates water temperature. This is the turbo boost dial. That needle will go up to the indicated yellow mark during the race. Instead of having an oil pressure gauge, we have a red warning light that will only come on when there is low oil pressure or trouble. The same applies to fuel pressure. That will only come on if there's little or no fuel left and it's not being picked up. This here, this little button, is just to check if all of those lights are working correctly. And if the driver wants no lights, he can switch this off and it cancels those too. Finally, the panic button. If the car goes on fire, the driver presses this and fire extinguishing fluid comes all around the cockpit, allowing him time to get out. So as you can see, there's a considerable difference between the cockpit of a street car and the cockpit of a racing car. The race driver has much less to look at and much less to do. We in our street cars have got to have much more instrumentation, many more controls. For the race driver, those simply wouldn't be possible in the interests of safety and concentration. But at the same time, everything is within reach and easy sight.
Okay, the cockpit of a racing car. Rick Mears still the leader by a couple of laps over his teammate, Al Unser Sr. Al Holbert, the rookie, still in third place, one place higher than Sam Posey predicted calmly and coolly before the race that he would finish, in fact.
There's Al Sr. just in the foreground. There's Rick Mears, who seems to be going faster at this point than Al Sr.
Yeah, and he's closing in on Al Sr. Another car in between them, but that's Al Sr. up in front.
Yep.
So
once again,
another lap soon to his teammate.
Right, and that's Tom Gloy, who's driven such a good race, staying out of everyone's way in his rookie appearance. And here comes Rick Mears, of course, into the pits.
Yeah, this will be his last topping off pit stop.
This should be absolutely routine, but it's just in this kind of thing, isn't it, that fiasco can occur. You know, looking at that cockpit piece, they're not changing the tires at all, just refueling. That cockpit right now for Rick Mears is like a cloister, Jim. It's warm, it's damp in there with his own sweat. I imagine he feels a oneness with the car at this point and with the task that he has ahead of him, focus, concentration that anybody would envy. Rick Mears.
Now the crowd, you hear him in the background, you see some of them waving. They're beginning to urge him on. He looks like their man. He's the one that they're going to identify with on this particular day.
A collective sense of achievement, really. Not just Rick Mears' achievement, everyone's.
That's the idea, identifying with the driver, win or lose. There's the way they stand. Well, Rick Rayvon Mears, born in Wichita, Kansas, raised in Bakersfield, California, certainly seems on his way to winning the 1984 Indianapolis 500. 13 laps to go, however, but it would have to be something happening to his car to stop him now, because his lead is so long over everybody, and as you know, the second place car is his teammate, Al Unser Jr. So one way or another, the Penske people appear to be in pretty good shape in this year's race. Rick Mears likes to water ski in his spare time, fly remote-controlled planes, drive remote-controlled cars. Pretty mechanical with everything he does.
Yeah, but Jim, did you notice how many things you just mentioned? He's had dozens of hobbies.
Oh, yeah.
None of them hold his interest for very long. Yeah. Only racing holds his interest, and I think you can see why. But by the way, his latest toy, if you can call it that, is a radio-controlled helicopter that he bought just a couple of days before. The point of keeping to himself on the morning of the race. He stays in the Speedway Motel, where I do as well, and he stayed there very late this morning, having breakfast there with his girlfriend. There's Roger Penske.
Squirming nervously.
Yeah. Of course, he can't work off the tension.
No.
Rick Mears is busy. I mean, his heart rate in that car, even though he's relatively relaxed, is probably triple what it would ordinarily be. And the physical effort has been kind of measured approximately as about what it would be if you were chopping wood. Isn't that funny? Because he just seems to be sitting there.
Still.
Yeah, but there's really a lot more to it than that, even though the movement of the circumference of the wheel is very, very small.
Age 32, Mears has driven 84 IndyCar races. Not at Indy, but IndyCar type races. So the experience is there.
He's having the kind of victory, Jim, you're interested in horses. Remember Secretariat at the Belmont Stakes?
Secretariat by 31 in the Belmont.
That's right.
Hope one of mine can do the same someday. Anywhere. Rick Mears. And the crowd looking on. Nobody's left for sure. 400,000 and more. There's Roger Penske and Karen Unser, Al Unser Sr.'s wife.
Right, we visited them recently out in Albuquerque. They make their home. There's Rick Mears. Still running very, very fast, but Jim, it's not because he's forcing the car or jeopardizing its reliability at all. It's keeping his rhythm up, and this cool air that's swept across the track here is making speeds, high speeds, possible.
I don't think it's raining out there anymore, by the way. Looks to be all right. So Rick Mears, holding that lead, has 5 laps to go. 5 laps to go, and he'll win his second Indianapolis 500. We'll witness it. 4 laps to go in the Indianapolis 500 of 1984, and Rick Mears is, well, breezing along with the breeze. No problems evident anywhere, in the pits or on the race course. The second place car, his teammate, Al Unser, more than a lap behind. Nobody is going to be able to catch him or even come close to him. He's just got to finish the course now. Interesting that Roger Penske, the meticulous preparer of cars, has another race, type of race car running for him today.
Well, exactly, because in the first 2 races of this season before Indianapolis, his own Penske cars, Jim, broke down. Both of them broke down. He's 0 for 4, so to speak, this year. So he made the decision to switch to these marches, which he got very late in the game. There's Penske's wife. You can feel the emotion there. She's with Rick Mears' parents. You see his mother on the left. Of course, they're just counting the laps that are going by. That threat of rain that we felt a few minutes ago. You see the extent of the emotion. Maybe it's almost harder to control joy, Jim, than a feeling of tragedy.
Sometimes, you know, talking about Penske changing cars, it takes, I think, a highly intelligent man to face the reality that the cars he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars developing for this year simply aren't good enough, and to have to scrap them and go out and buy somebody else's race cars. But that's, I think, a function of intelligence.
Well, right, and Roger didn't get where he is, and I've known him for many years, by letting his emotions overrule logic. He's an extremely logical man.
The March cars that we're talking about have totally dominated this race. What is it? I think 29 or 30 of the 33 cars that started are Marches made in England. But the driver was made in America.
Here is the very best March of the day. And if you're wondering why he's still running so fast, Jim, with the end virtually in sight, you don't want to lose your rhythm. It's really safer to keep running at full speed than to slow down. You mentioned earlier something about a golfer. You know, when he tries to play defensively,
doesn't work.
You may lose the whole thing. So Rick Mears, very wise, I say, to keep his foot in it here. Running well up in the 199 range right now.
Penske getting tenser with each lap, I think.
Yeah.
A 1-2 finish is almost too much to hope for. There's the white flag. Rick Mears has 1 lap to go. 1 lap to go to win his second Indianapolis 500. At the age of 32, he won in 1979. 5 years later, he is on his way to victory again.
And boy, would he like to win this one, because there were many that said the first
There's
one.
his mother.
There's his mother. Rick's mother. Many of them said that the first one he won here was a little bit of a fluke. He was still so new to the game. This one's no fluke at all.
No question about that. And then, of course, he almost won another in that breathtaking finish with Gordon Johncock, where he lost by 16/100ths of a second.
Very little of this race to go, Jim, and I think it's going to come in just before it rains.
Crowd waving to him, the applause growing, the checkered flag for Rick Mears. He's won the Indianapolis 500 with a hand in the air.
Yep, hand in the air.
There's his mother. And Al Unser, who we believe to be finishing second in the race. There's been some confusing on the scoring system at the racetrack here about that. We believe Al Unser is second, but there, still with that hand in the air, is Rick Mears. Kathy Penske more emotional than Rick's parents.
Yep, as I said, it's so hard, that joy, you're almost not ready for that emotion. It is that strong. And a big thumbs up from Rick Mears.
Well, Rick Mears, it seemed to be an effortless run for you today.
Well, yeah, none of them are effortless. You do have to work at it, but the guys just did a tremendous job on a Pennzoil car, and it never missed a beat all day long. And they got me in and out on some good, clean pit stops, so it really made my job pretty easy. We just had to keep our head on straight and stay out of trouble all day, and that's what we did, and it just worked out perfect.
When Sneva dropped out of the race, were you aware of it, and what were your thoughts?
Yes, I was aware of it, and you know, I was sorry for him, but it was a relief for me because he was my toughest competitor. And I really figured we were going to have a heads-up battle right at the end of the race, and really going to be a good, close, tough show. But you know, he had his problem, and so that enabled me to kind of cruise the rest of the way, which I'm not going to complain about.
This is your second Indy 500 victory. Does it feel as great as your first one?
I tell you what, I think it feels better because the first one I was still pretty new at it, and I didn't realize exactly what it all meant. But and it took a week to soak in. This one's soaking in already, and I'm very happy.
And your mom and dad are here. Where are they? They were right over here on the side. They've got to be thrilled.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I was just very thrilled for the team, especially because we've been down. Like I say, we had a little bit of a low year last year and a low year to begin with now. And we knew if we got competitive, we could get the job done, and the guys did it for me.
Well, will you go back to the Penske design now, or will you stay with the March for a while?
Well, we got to go home and discuss that.
I doubt if Rick is thinking of much now except for the exhilaration of his great drive, but there are other delights that go with an Indy win. The purse this year is expected to be a new record, and although the official amounts will not be disclosed until tomorrow, it should work out like this. Rick Mears, about $400,000. Second place, about $180,000. Now again to Jack Arute. Jack?
Skip Mears, you've got to be excited and thrilled with this 500 victory for your son.
Am I excited and am I thrilled? What do you do with a son like that? Let me tell you that. He does everything that way. He's a winner.
We watched you here in Victory Lane with about 15 laps to go, and you walked back and forth. You looked like a caged little animal. What was going through your mind?
Well, you know, I don't ever say anything or do anything until that black flag comes down and that race is over. I've learned the checkered flag. And I learned it a long time ago. Pardon me for being so excited, but I learned it a long time ago, so I just hope, and I did a lot of praying, and let me tell you, I think that's what does it.
Well, Bill Mears, your husband corrected you when you said black flag and said, no, it's the checkered flag. Bill, you seem to be pretty dialed into what was going on today. Got to be pleased.
Yes, real well. We was up in the suites with the INSO 4 people, and we just couldn't believe it. He was just running 202, 204, and we just knew that we all had a good feeling that he was going to win.
What does it mean to a father to have a son be an Indy 500 champion? Just emotions, too tough to describe. A former driver yourself, Bill. Right now, it's just after the checkered flag has dropped. Penske Power has won again at Indianapolis. Very impressive. The preparation of the Penske team is good as ever. After 2 failures in the early part of this season, he made a very courageous choice. He put away cars of his own name on them and brought out the March cars. They've won this race, the world's most important race, and they've won it with a great driver. Rick Mears drove with the calm, the calculation of a man of enormous experience. He was quiet for the month of May. Everyone else was getting a boost, but he was confident. He's come through today with a car that really handled well. It could drive almost anywhere on the racetrack, but it was his experience and knowledge that brought it in to win. There were 3 rookies, however, in the top 5. That's always very nice for me to see new blood coming along, but it's also correct to see experience actually winning. Roberto Guerrero, for me, was incredibly efficient. He came in after his spin. He went out, he didn't like the way the car was handling. He came in to get it checked, just to be sure, and went out again to finish up top there. He also stalled his engine, incidentally, through inexperience perhaps in one of his pit stops. A.J. Foyt finished 6th, terrific. Al Unser Jr., tremendous. Michael Andretti, tremendous. Great to look for the future. Pat Bedard, by the way, as I speak to you right now, is in Methodist Hospital. He's got a fractured jaw. He is alert and awake in compos mentis, but he has severe concussion. Gordon Johncock, as I speak to you right now, is in surgery at Methodist Hospital with his ankle being attended to. Well, a very eventful Indianapolis. A great victory for him, for that man of the Penske Power, Rick Mears. Now, let's have a look at the provisional, unofficial standings at this time. Now, it will not be until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning before official results are posted. So what we are giving you, as I say again, are unofficial. We have Rick Mears winning the Indy 500 of 1984. We have Al Unser Sr. finishing 2nd and Roberto Guerrero of Colombia, a rookie, finishing 3rd. Al Holbert, as Sam Posey forecast, finished 4th. And Michael Andretti finished 5th. In 6th position, the great A.J. Foyt. Bobby Rahal was 7th, Herm Johnson with 8th, Danny Ongayas was 9th, and Jose Garza from Mexico was 10th. George Snyder, Firestone, Holmes, Gloy, a rookie, and Kneifel was back there in 15th. Sneva, Andretti, Braden, see Carter and Cogan finished 20th. The rest of the field, as they were mostly retiring, having trouble during this day of the 200 laps of this 2.5-mile oval. And making up the final 3 was Gelhausen, Fittipaldi and Brabham. Poor man only did 1 lap.
Now, we had a new record average speed by the winner, 163 miles per hour. That beat the old record set in 1972 by the late Mark Donohue. Ironically, he was also driving a Penske-entered car. Records are made to be broken. So these official results will not be posted until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. But we've had a great day at Indianapolis.